Have you ever shared a bed with someone you weren't supposed to want? It was just a weekend. Just a friend. That's what I kept telling myself as Nate, my straight best friend, climbed into bed beside me after one too many drinks and a busted air mattress. The room was dim, the kind of dark that blurs lines and intentions. We laughed quietly under the covers like kids at a sleepover. No touches, no confessions, just heat, breath, and the slow creep of something unspeakable rising between us, his body reacting to sleep and mine reacting to asterisk star. I didn't cross a line that night, but I stared at it, felt it, wanted to understand what it meant to stand that close to a boundary and not know if I was hoping to fall over. The thing is, that moment didn't ruin my relationship, but it revealed everything that already had. Julian and I had built a life out of quiet rituals. We lived on the third floor of a narrow brownstone in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Sunlight poured through our east-facing windows in the mornings, casting honey-colored stripes across the hardwood. Our apartment smelled like coffee and eucalyptus, with a constant soundtrack of indie vinyls playing from Julian's ever-growing collection. He was a writer, earnest, detail-oriented, emotionally fluent. The kind of man who bought fresh flowers just because and left me notes tucked into books I hadn't started reading yet. We'd been together 5 years. Met at a Halloween party neither of us wanted to attend. I was dressed as Freddie Mercury, complete with a mustache and cheap aviators. He was himself, but with eyeliner. He said he was going as emotional availability. I laughed and never really stopped. Julian was my safe harbor, my home. When I had lost my job during the pandemic, he picked up extra freelance work without saying a word, just so I could breathe. When my mother got sick, he flew with me to Ohio and sat through hours in sterile hospital waiting rooms, holding my hand like it anchored him, too. Our relationship was made of those moments, small, sacred act of love. But lately, I'd felt like a ghost in my own life. The intimacy between us had dulled. Sex had become scheduled, rare, sometimes skipped altogether in favor of sleep or Netflix. We still kissed goodbye in the mornings, still said I love you every night, but it felt like muscle memory. Like we were reciting lines from a play we once believed in. That was when Nate re-entered the picture. Nate had been my best friend in college. Straight, funny, magnetic in that messy, golden boy way. He played rugby, drank too much, and had a smile that could convince anyone, professors, cops, the guy at the taco truck, that he meant no harm. Our friendship had always been intense, but unspoken. We never crossed any lines, never named the electric pulse that sometimes ran between us. I convinced myself it was platonic. Mostly, after graduation, we drifted. Life happened. But when he messaged me that he'd be in the city for a wedding and needed a place to crash, it felt natural to say yes. Julian would be at a writing retreat upstate that weekend anyway. I didn't ask if he'd be okay with it. I just told him after the fact, brushing it off. It's just Nate, I said, forcing a smile across the dinner table. Julian gave me a look I didn't want to translate. And then he said, quietly, I just hope he still remembers you have a boyfriend. I laughed it off. But somewhere inside me, something shifted. I wasn't sure which part of that sentence unsettled me more, the warning, or the possibility that *I* was the one who had forgotten. Nate arrived late Friday evening, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and that familiar smirk playing on his lips like no time had passed. He hadn't changed much, still tousled hair, still that careless swagger. The kind of guy who could make ordering a slice of pizza sound like floating. Damn, he said, stepping into the apartment. This place is nice. You two really gated up, huh? I laughed, but it stung in a way I couldn't name. I caught myself glancing toward Julian's favorite plants by the window, half expecting them to wilt in protest. I poured us both a drink, whiskey, the way we used to in college, and we settled onto the couch, legs stretched out, playlist on shuffle. At first, it felt good, easy, like slipping into an old sweater, slightly stretched but comforting. We reminisced, told stories too loud for the neighbors, teased each other like we were 20 again. But beneath it all, something quieter was pulsing. At one point, Nate turned to me and said, "So how's Mr. Perfect?" I rolled my eyes. Julian's fine. Still brooding in linen shirts and writing about tree bark or whatever. I smirked. Close. This week it's about time and decay. Very cheerful. He laughed, and I joined in, but something coiled tight in my chest. I hated how easily he dismissed Julian. Hated more how I let him. You happy, though? Nate asked, suddenly softer. Like, really? The question landed like a sucker punch. I opened my mouth, closed it, took a sip of my drink. Yeah, I said, too quickly. I mean, mostly. Nate didn't press. He just nodded, then looked away. But the question echoed in the space between us long after the conversation had moved on. By midnight, the air mattress situation had fully collapsed, leaking from a slow, unpatchable hole. Guess I'll take the floor, Nate offered, unzipping his hoodie. I hesitated. Just crash in my bed, I said, voice too casual. It's fine. Plenty of room. He shrugged, already halfway through pulling off his shirt. You sure? I nodded, pretending not to notice the way my breath hitched when he stretched. We lay side by side, the glow of the streetlight slicing across the ceiling. I could feel the warmth of him beside me, smell his shampoo, faintly citrus, and smoke. Our bodies didn't touch, but the proximity felt loaded. Too much, too familiar. You ever think about back then? He asked in the dark. Back when? College. Us. That weird night after we lost that rugby match. You were drunk off your ass. Tried to convince me to kiss you. I laughed, startled. You remember that? Of course I do. I swallowed. I was an idiot. Yeah, but I didn't exactly stop you right away, did I? The silence that followed was thick, electric. I didn't mean anything by it, he said quickly. Just, funny what sticks with you, you know? I nodded, but my heart was racing. I could feel something rising inside me, desire, confusion, an old ache I thought I'd buried. I turned onto my side, facing away. Eventually, I fell asleep, and woke up to his thigh pressed lightly against mine, his morning wood clearly evident beneath the fabric of his briefs. I didn't move. I told myself it was normal, unintentional, biological, but I didn't move. In that still, quiet moment, I felt everything unravel. Not because anything happened, but because something asterisk could have star, and I wasn't entirely sure I would have stopped it. That evening, after Nate left and the apartment was quiet again, I called Julian. I told him I missed him, which wasn't exactly true, and asked how the retreat was going. Good, he said. I wrote something about us today. Oh, yay. I tried to sound light. Yeah, about how love sometimes feels like an echo. Familiar, but faint. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing, and let the silence stretch long between us. Julian got back Sunday afternoon. He dropped his bag by the door and kissed me, soft but distracted, like he was tasting the distance between us. How was it? I asked, watching him move through the apartment like a stranger returning to a life he wasn't sure still belonged to him. Productive, he said, then paused. Lonely. I looked away. You could have texted. You could have called, he replied, quiet but pointed. We went through the motions. Take-8, TV, folding laundry, but everything felt slightly misaligned, like we were performing intimacy instead of living in it. I kept replaying the night with Nate in my mind, the warmth of his leg against mine, the question he asked in the dark. That night, Julian came to bed early. He curled up beside me, his hand resting lightly on my chest. I felt his breath against my neck, and I almost convinced myself we were okay. But then he said, "Did you sleep with him?" The question was a whisper, fragile and heavy. My body went still. No, I said, too fast. He didn't move, but you thought about it. I closed my eyes. Julian, don't lie to me. Please, not now. I sat up, pulled the covers tighter around my waist like they could shield me from the truth. Nothing happened. But you wanted something to. I don't know, I said. Maybe. For a second. It was late. We were drunk. And he was. Someone who's always made you question everything. I looked at him then, really looked. He wasn't angry. He was asterisk hurt star. Worse than angry. His eyes were glossy, and his mouth twisted into something between sorrow and surrender. "I didn't touch him," I said, my voice breaking. "I swear." He nodded slowly. "But you wanted him more than you wanted protect asterisk, as the asterisk that's a part one can't stop hearing." His words gutted me. I tried to explain it, how Nate made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not just desire, but attention, that electric sense of possibility. Like I could still be someone new, someone interesting. I told Julian it didn't mean I loved him any less. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. "I don't think I've stopped loving you," I said, the confession burning its way out of me. "But I don't know if I've been showing asterisk up in this relationship. Not really. Not in a long time." Julian sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, eyes focused on the floor. "Then maybe we've both been pretending," he said, almost to himself, holding on to the idea of each other instead of the reality. "I didn't want to lose you," I said. "Then why did you risk it?" he asked. I didn't have an answer, just the echo of Nate's voice in the dark. "Asterisk you happy, though? Like, really, asterisk." Julian stood, walked to the window, and opened it slightly. Cool spring air rushed in, rattling the blinds. "I don't hate you," he said. "But I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly wondering if you're somewhere else, emotionally, mentally, or in someone else's bed." I nodded. Tears blurred my vision, but I let them fall, because he was right. I hadn't physically cheated, but I'd crossed a boundary just the same, maybe a deeper one. I had opened a door in my heart I'd once promised to keep locked, and now we were standing in the wreckage, breathing the same air, but knowing something between us had cracked for good. Julian moved out 2 weeks later, not in a flurry of anger with doors slamming behind him, but quietly, almost lovingly. He left the plants in the window, a pair of slippers under the bed, and a note on the fridge that simply said, "Asterisk, take care of yourself. And don't shrink to fit someone else's idea of you. Asterisk." I reread it every morning for a month. The apartment felt emptier than I expected. Not just because his things were gone, but because I realized how much of myself had been anchored to asterisk a star. In the silence, I started noticing who I was without him. Not in a way that felt freeing, at least not yet, but in a way that felt honest. Nate and I haven't spoken since that weekend. He texted once, a week later, "Asterisk, hope you're good. I think I messed something up. Asterisk." I never answered, not because I hated him, but because I finally understood that what I felt with Nate wasn't love. It was longing, for attention, for validation, for some version of me I hadn't fully let go of. He was a mirror I kept looking into, trying to find proof that I was still desirable, still exciting, still asterisk enough star. The truth is, I don't know if I'll ever stop loving Julian. But maybe love isn't always enough. Not if it's not chosen every day. Not if it doesn't make you feel safe and seen. I'm learning to sit with that. Some nights I lie in bed and remember how it felt to laugh with him over nothing. How we used to share dreams like secrets and grocery lists like vows. I wonder what would have happened if I had been braver, or more honest, or if I'd asked for what I needed instead of waiting for it to appear in someone else's smile. There are no neat endings in stories like this. Just lessons written in heartbeats and hindsight. I didn't cheat with my body, but I broke something with my silence, with my asterisk almost the asterisk. And sometimes I still wonder, which kind of betrayal leaves a deeper scar, the one that happens in someone else's bed, or the one that happens quietly, in your own?